Stir her. Trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go. Ha ha ha, my bracket busted. Those are trigger words for me. My bracket busted are possibly three of the gayest words any man can ever say, or women, because chicks be saying that gay ass shit too. And nobody just says their bracket busted. They always crack the fuck up as they say it. People think it's the funniest shit ever. If someone asks me how my bracket's doing, I don't even want to answer it because I don't fucking care. I literally don't care how my stupid ass bracket's doing. And if I don't care how my bracket's doing, then you really can't possibly care how my fucking bracket's doing. So I don't know why people ask me about it, but I do know why they're asking me. It's because they're basic as fuck. And basic ass people start the same basic ass conversations. And it's happening because I'm driving Uber during the NCAA tournament and I'm listening to the games on the radio because other than the dangers of always being on the road, I have the best job ever. Before deductions last week, I made 1950 working 55 hours just driving around listening to the NCAA tournament on the radio. It's fucking amazing. I'm making more money this week. It really is my dream job. If I have to work a shitty ass job, I couldn't have created a better one. But the downfall of it is entertaining small talk. And when people hear the games in the radio, very frequently it's followed up by, "You see those games today? Ha ha ha, my bracket busted." But when people make a big deal about their bracket busting, they're talking about their bracket that they entered into some $10 pool and the winner wins like $300 at most. That's why people sound corny as fuck to me when they make a big deal out of it because it's so fucking arbitrary. And maybe they're not making a big deal out of it, but they're mentioning it to me, and I'm their Uber driver. You think the fucking Uber driver wants to hear about your NCAA bracket or talk to you about his? And not only do I not care about your bracket busting, I don't even want to hear about if you're in first place of your bracket in like your pool. I still don't fucking care if you might win your pool. I've lost more betting on preseason NFL football games than they might win from some stupid ass pool. And spare me on the whole, it's not about the money, it's about the pride and having bragging rights. That's gay as fuck. And if someone wins their pool, it's not like I'm impressed by the fact that they picked the games right. Even if you picked the whole Final Four right, great job. I don't fucking care. You guessed correctly. This year's Final Four is Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, UConn, and Miami. Even if you got that Final Four right, I still don't fucking care. Nor do I want to hear about your stupid ass thought process or strategy that went into picking it. I don't care if you watched those specific teams play and really liked what you saw and it was like really about basketball, your decision. And I don't care if it's the opposite you pick based on who would win in a fight between the mascots or which schools your wife hates, because that's the gayest shit people do. I just don't fucking care about your bracket. And the people who will yap your ear off about their bracket, they're not exactly college basketball junkies. The large majority of them haven't, like, literally haven't watched one college basketball game all season and can't name five players in the NCAA tournament. I have watched a bunch of games throughout the season, and I still don't know shit. I'm just guessing when I fill out my bracket. And the ESPN analysis, they do know a lot and they do have real reasoning behind their picks. And they're basically still just guessing when they make their picks. They have basis behind it, but the ESPN analysis are basically just guessing. It's because almost all of these teams are on the same level. They're all really good college basketball teams. The majority of the worst teams in the tournament are almost just as good as the majority of the best teams. They're close enough for it to not shock me if they beat them in one game on a neutral court on any given night. And it really doesn't shock me when I don't know who any of the players are on either team. And here's why the bracket busting conversation really grinds my gears. Because people do the whole ha ha ha, my bracket busted after like the first upset of the tournament. Some 12 seed beats a 5 seed in the first round. The person had the 5 seed making the Sweet 16, which is only winning one more game. And they're like, "You see, Virginia lost to Furman. Ha ha ha, my bracket busted." When in actuality, you could lose a Final Four team on the first day of the tournament and still win a huge pool, no matter how big the pool is, unless it's like a chalk year. No one ever gets the whole Final Four right. So when people say their bracket busted, it's usually factually incorrect and not even close to actually being busted. And everybody gets all shocked by these upsets when this shit happens every year. Almost every single year, crazy shit happens in the first round of the tournament. That's why it's called March Madness. And it seems to always live up to the hype. But I'm used to it by now. It's kind of like a lot of people's dialogue and their tone when they're talking about the NCAA tournament is static throughout their lives. They're in their 40s still sounding like they did when they're 12 years old talking about that shit. Talking about their bracket like it actually fucking matters. Making big deal out of all the upsets. Like they haven't seen it happen every other tournament for the past 30 years. When I was 12 years old, I couldn't believe what would happen in the NCAA tournament. All the upsets had me losing my mind. I was hitting up my pops at work like, yo, did you see Providence beat North Carolina? I lost 2 Final Four teams to say, oh, I think my bracket's busted. I was 12, though. Now I'm 37 years old. I've seen literally 30 NCAA tournaments go down. I know what's par for the course. I'm used to all the madness in the tournament. I expect crazy shit to happen, specifically on the first day of the tournament or in the first round. I'm shocked when there isn't any exciting games or top 10 teams get knocked out after day one. When I was younger, I was gay as fuck. Nobody made a bigger deal out of their bracket than me. I used to think my bracket was the most important thing in the universe. The week the tournament started, my bracket was all I talked about. If we had a conversation leading up to the tournament, it didn't matter what the subject was. You were going to hear who was in my Final Four, whether you want to or not. Nobody used to be more obsessed with the bracket than me. But my excuse is I was 12. And that's the whole point of this. I was a child and I didn't know better. These are adults sounding like children. And like I said, upsets no longer shock me, and my bracket busting also no longer shocks me. I don't ever win my pool, which means sooner or later, every single year, my bracket busts. So I'm not surprised when it happens, nor do I make a big deal out of it. And since losing $10 or potentially winning 300 is no longer a big deal to me, I don't give a fuck about my bracket busting. In fact, I care so little, I don't even pay attention to it. I'm in one really big pool every year. I submit a bunch of entries and I don't even bother checking the standings until after the first weekend. And then I check to see if any of my brackets actually have a path to winning. And I've learned throughout my life that even if I did still care about my bracket, nobody else does. And nobody wants to hear it other than the passengers in my car who are apparently obsessed with how my bracket's doing. And I am locked into the games of the tournament, but that's not because I'm that into college basketball. It's just because my life is pathetic and I got nothing else going on. It's something to pay attention to. But the tournament in general doesn't excite me like it did when I was younger, unless I'm planning to actually bet on the games. Then I am just as excited about the tournament tipping off as I was when I was younger. I'm a sports gambling junkie. There's nothing that gets me more excited than betting more money than I have on a game of sports and watching it. Undoubtedly, sports gambling is my favorite pastime. It's been my thing since before it was normalized. I can't get enough of it. It's a fucking drug. I've lost so much money betting on sports. And if you're betting what you consider to be a lot of money to you, then who wins the game? It's not arbitrary. The results actually do matter to you. And if you're playing in the games, then the results aren't arbitrary. They're just arbitrary to everybody who has no stake in the game. No stake in the game that fucking matters to them. But that's why I was so excited about the tournament when I was younger. It was primarily because it was my first taste of sports gambling. It was my first taste of any type of gambling, specifically sports gambling. And entering a pool is essentially sports gambling. It's a really mild form of sports gambling though, because of how little amount of money everyone puts into it. So it's arbitrary for adults. But back when I was 12 years old, to me, it wasn't arbitrary. The thought of winning $200 was life changing. When I used to fill out my bracket, I'd be fantasizing what I would spend that money on. It was like the money was spent before I even submitted the bracket. Everything in life is relative. I used to root for each game in my bracket as hard as I root for a game now if I have $500 on it. I would always look at the standings and I would look at everyone else's brackets and I would know which games had to break my way for the pool to win. Like I'm talking about after the first like few days of the tournament, like I would see where I stood and I would know what games had to go my way. And it would always get to a point where I knew what my elimination game was, where if the team who I picked lost, it was literally impossible for me to win the pool. And I remember once watching Texas lose, and I thought my life was over because I was eliminated from the pool, and the dream of winning $200 that year was dead. So it was the gambling aspect of it that fueled my obsession with the NCAA tournament. But it was that mixed with the fact that I grew up around basketball. It's all my house was about. My pop's coaching AU basketball team. He was beyond crazy with it. Like we were nice with it. Like I probably said growing up, my pop's AU team finished third place in the state tournament a trillion times. Like so, I was just obsessed. We were all obsessed with AU basketball, but it was like a way of life in our house, and no one in my family was into the NBA. It was all about college basketball, but even more so AAU and high school basketball. And the players that we would know about, like, would eventually play in college. So I knew a lot of college players when I was growing up. And I was like mad into college basketball in general. I thought I knew a lot more than I actually did, but I did know a lot more of the players than I do now. Plus, college players were just more household names in general back then. Everybody knew more players, but I was hyper aware of players. But that's like another thing about filling out my bracket. Even though I didn't actually know shit about basketball when I was younger, I was much more aware of who the players were and had a better idea than I do now of who was on what team. I was able to at least envision some of the teams matching up against one another when I was making the picks. So I was able to put some thought into it. This year when I filled out my bracket, I was looking at like I'm literally just guessing. I have no fucking clue who's on almost any of these teams. I'm just picking based on seeding and my perception of the school in terms of basketball. At least when I was younger, I always had a few teams that I knew I'd like to make a run at the Final Four, but that's no longer even the case. Now I looked at each region, like I literally don't even know who to guess. It's just a crapshoot to me who comes out of each region pre-tournament. Ever since the year that Loyola and South Carolina made the Final Four, I was like, I don't know who's gonna fucking make the Final Four before these tournaments start, and it happened again this year. Final Four is all set right now: Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, UConn, and Miami. It makes sense. I didn't know who the fuck to guess. And ESPN's free entry pool, which has to be the largest pool in the world, I bet not one person got that whole Final Four correct. And even if there was someone who got it right, it's because it's just like a numbers game and every possibility was selected by somebody. It's not like there's one person who just really knows the game of basketball and had basis behind their picks. So college basketball in general was just always such a big deal in my house growing up. And the fact that not only was March Madness my first taste of sports gambling, but it happened in the sport that I dedicated my pathetic life to following. It created the perfect storm for me to think the world stopped for the NCAA tournament and my bracket was the most important thing in the universe. And that's what's ironic that now I got to entertain all the basic ass bracket busting conversation because it's like I'm listening to what I used to be when I was younger. It's almost like karma. But it goes back to the fact that I was 12 and these are grown ass adults. But that's exactly why they sound pathetic, making a big deal of their bracket. Because no one used to make a bigger deal out of it than me. But then I grew up and realized how arbitrary it is. And it's only happening because I drive Uber. And the people who I drive are very nice. It's just they have the same basic ass conversations. Like it's clockwork. And back when I was younger, like when I used to make a big deal out of my bracket, it wasn't arbitrary because of how valuable the $200 would have been to me. But since then and now, I've actually worked jobs. I'm not wealthy by any means, but I'm at a point in my life where losing $10 doesn't matter to me, nor does winning 200. And like I said, nobody enjoys the thrill of sports gambling more than I do. I live for that shit. So I understand the excitement of games when there's something at stake, but there's virtually nothing at stake in any of these pools. And that's why it sounds childish when everybody talks about the brackets like it actually matters. I did when I was younger, but I just didn't know better. Not to mention, they sound stupid when they get all excited talking about the games because they're not even watching the games. At most, they're seeing highlights, but they're morely just more so just probably hearing results and finding out who beat who. The passengers in my car when I'm working are a direct representation of the population. It's a microcosm of what I think is corny about people. If I drive 100 passengers, a percentage of them will undoubtedly ask me the same exact questions, phrased identically. It's like, as a whole, everybody's programmed as fuck. And the universe throws these people at you because God finds it funny to observe your reaction, or at least God finds it funny to observe my reaction. Literally, my first passenger on the day of the tournament tipped off. It was some kid, presumably in his 20s, which means he should be capable of sitting there in silence. It's usually the older people who feel the need to talk. But he hears the game on the radio. It was like the tip off of the first fucking game. He gets me excited and goes, "Who you got winning it?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know who's gonna win it. I don't really have anybody." And he looked befuddled. That kid has never gotten that answer before. Throughout his life leading up to the NCAA tournament, he has probably asked hundreds of people, if not thousands, who they have winning it. And everyone always spews out some fucking team. No one has ever told him they don't know who's going to win. No one's ever told him that they don't got nobody. But I literally don't have anybody winning it this year, like a specific team. Every year, I'm in a big ass pool with like 500 people. And if you want to win any pool, at minimum, you got to get the champion right. And for the most part, every year before the tournament, you could limit the winner down to like 6 or 8 teams or so. So what I figure is it's worth it to just throw $80 into the pool and fill out 8 similar brackets, but with 8 different teams winning. And then no matter who wins it all, I should be covered. So then if miraculously I do pick a relatively good bracket, I might be set up to win no matter who wins it. But even though I fill out 8 brackets, I still don't give a fuck about my brackets. I don't pay attention to the standings until after the first weekend. And then I see if I'm in position with any of the brackets to potentially finish in the top 3 because that's who gets paid. But back to the kid who asked me who I got winning it, and it's just not him. He was just the first person throughout the tournament who asked me who I got winning it. And like I said before, it was like the first play of the first game. He gets in the car, he's like, "Who you got winning?" I literally just like laughed. I was thinking, of course, this kid wants to know who I fucking got winning it. What could possibly compel someone to ask the Uber driver who they got winning it? Do they just assume the Uber driver is like extremely knowledgeable in sports because he like drives around, listens to sports talk radio all day, and they want to get his insight? Or are these people just really curious who I specifically have winning it? Which would be weird because it's not like I'm friends with them where they might like actually want to know who I got going forward so they can rub it in if my team loses. Because I know people love to do that. How about Jim? He had Arizona win it and they lost in the first round of Princeton. Ha ha. But in terms of who's gonna win it, like what the fuck do I know? All I know is public perception of the teams. The year Kentucky had Anthony Davis, they had like 5 NBA lottery picks and one loss all season. Everybody was saying they might be one of the best teams ever. So that year leading up to the tournament, when people asked me who I thought was gonna win it, I said Kentucky. But I probably didn't even have them in my bracket because everybody had them winning it that year. So when like you have to pick something different when everyone has the same team winning it. So when people ask you who you got winning, are they even asking who I think is gonna win the championship or who do I pick in my stupid ass bracket? Either way, I don't know who's gonna win. I don't fucking care. Another guy in my car on the first day of the tournament answered his phone, and the first thing he said to whoever called him, "How's your bracket doing?" There was a pause. He started cracking up and said to his friend in the car, Billy says bracket busted already. I couldn't imagine telling someone my bracket busted. This guy's telling someone that another person's bracket busted. And then after that guy got the phone, he said to his friend in the car, "You see all those crazy upsets today?" And then he proceeds to have the most tired ass March Madness conversation. Like it was the first time he ever saw an NCAA tournament in his life. This guy was like in his 50s. And I found it funny because he said to his friend something like, you know Ted from accounting? He filled out 5 brackets and he started cracking up. He thought it was the funniest shit ever that the guy submitted multiple entries. He would have had a fucking heart attack if I turned around and told him I filled out 8 brackets in my one pool. People are so predictable. There was so much action in my car on the first day of the tournament. There's one guy hears the game on the radio and goes, "Big college basketball fan?" And I was just like, yeah, I love college basketball. But I just wanted to be like, not really. I think being mad into watching sports is corny as fuck. But compared to the average person, yeah, I probably am considered a big college basketball fan. And people love asking that question. Are you a big fill in the blank fan? Like whatever the fuck I'm listening to at the time. And I've been asked it basically about every single sport because I'll throw any major live sporting event on the radio when I'm driving. Like, I'm not a big fan of these sports, but I am a big fan of driving around as my job listening to the sports. If I gotta be driving and there's a big game happening or like a match of any kind, I figure I might as well throw that shit on. Feel the energy of the live event, and it's just something good neutral to have on in a car, like just to have sports playing with people and just fill the air, like with passengers in my car. Yesterday was opening day of baseball, so I was listening to the games throughout the day. Multiple people asked me, "Big baseball fan?" I just said, "Yeah, I like baseball." When in actuality, it's so far from the truth. I don't fucking like baseball, but I don't feel like explaining all of this to them. It's easier just to say, "Yeah, I'm a big baseball fan." One kid asked me, "Is baseball your main sport?" Like, nah, baseball's not my fucking main sport, dog. What does it matter what my main sport is? But the main reason it bothers me when you ask me if I'm a big fan of whatever sport I'm listening to is because it's the stupidest fucking question in the world. And there's mad stupid questions, but you can't get stupider than this. You could only get tied for being this stupid because you hear me listen to the game on the radio, so I must be a big fan of the sport. Big college basketball fan? No, I fucking hate college basketball. It's really the most ridiculous shit ever that they ask that stupid ass question. And if I'm not actually a big fan of the sport, do you really want to hear me explain why I'm listening to it, even though I'm not actually a huge fan of the sport? It's like, why fucking ask me the question in the first place? And not just assume, oh, yeah, this Uber driver must be a big college basketball or big baseball fan if he's listening to the game right now. It's not like it's a question you gotta 100% know the answer to. But during the NCAA tournament, I find it extra ridiculous when people ask me if I'm a big college basketball fan because it doesn't take a big college basketball fan to have the games playing on the radio while they're driving Uber on the first day of the NCAA tournament. Like it seems pretty standard to just throw the fucking games on. I could see asking me that question if I was listening to some random regular season game on like a Tuesday night. But even those games I listen to because when I'm driving, like why not? Like what the fuck else am I gonna listen to? If I'm driving by myself, a lot of time I just sit there in silence thinking. But with passengers in my car, I like to have something on to fill the air. And like I said, it's something neutral just to have playing. I guess you gravitate to what type of person you are. And I listen to sports. I grew up around sports. If there's a sporting event on, I just throw it on, whatever fuck it is. If the Wimbledon Championship is playing and I'm driving, I'm gonna put it on, and it's gonna be so stupid when someone asks me if I'm a big tennis fan. I guess you could say I'm just a big sports fan. Which leads me to the next lady. It wasn't a conversation about the NCAA tournament, but it happened during the tournament, so it's relevant here. It's one lady. She sees it's like the college sports station playing on the radio because it says the station I'm listening to on the display screen in my car. And she goes, "College sports, who do you root for?" I was like, "Oh, I don't root for anybody." She was like, "Oh, so you're just a big sports fan." I was like, yeah, that's me. Big sports fan. Can't get enough of it. Ha ha ha. I was thinking, honestly, though, I am a big fan of listening to these pointless ass games while I drive your dumb ass around as my job. That's what I truly am a fan of. Fucking best job ever. But then that lady, she was sweet, but she was like, I'm a big sports fan too. And started telling me about how she had opening day tickets to upcoming Giants, like opening day game, baseball Giants. And she was sitting like 10 rows up. And I was like, wow, 10 rows up. That's so exciting. And she was like, yeah, I cannot wait for the game. It's going to be so much fun. If I had opening day tickets but wasn't allowed to bet, I wouldn't even wanna go, even if I was fucking sitting 10 rows up. That's how little I actually enjoy watching sports. But if I had G on the game, everything would be different. Be counting the minutes till game time, till first pitch. Telling everybody I knew, like, "Yo, 10 motherfucking rows up, let's fucking go." But so another day during the tournament, this one kid heard a game on, and since we're in Austin, he was like, "Did Texas win yesterday?" I was like, "Yeah, they won." He gave a fist pump and was like, "Good." I just want to be like, "Dude, are you pretending to me that you care, or are you pretending to yourself?" It was an NCAA tournament game, and not only did he not watch it, he didn't even fucking track it. And not only did he not track it, he didn't even bother to check the score before he went to sleep the night before. And then he woke up the next morning and wasn't thinking, "Oh, fuck, who won the Texas game last night?" And didn't even think twice about it until you heard the Uber driver listen to games on the radio. Like, and I don't care that he doesn't give a fuck that Texas won, but why say, why ask if Texas won to say good when you hear that they won? You don't fucking care. I don't care. Like, what the fuck do I care? What the fuck you root for? But it's in my Uber, and I gotta deal with it. I'll be talking about like frequency and shit. Like I live my own universe right now. I'm on my own frequency, but people enter my frequency when I drive them around rideshare and Uber and Lyft, and that's when you're on some nonsense when everything you says is stupid and you're in my car, then I gotta fucking listen to it. I'd already started creating this episode, and then the next interaction happened. This one was amazing. I got true joy out of this. I did this for my own amusement, and it paid off like I never dreamt possible. This was undoubtedly this week because the Final Four was set when this guy asked me, and it's set now and hasn't been played yet. The games are tomorrow. So this guy goes, "How's your bracket doing?" And I just said one word: busted. I swear I have never made someone laugh so fucking hard in my life. He was cracking up. I thought he was like, the crying emojis. Like, I thought he was about to start fucking crying, yo. And he even said, quote unquote, "That's hilarious." And then he said, "We're all in the same boat, my friend." And I just wanted to be like, yeah, I know we're all in the same boat because the Final Four is set. And unless you might actually win your pool, your bracket's fucking busted at this point. It happens every year. It hasn't been funny for the past 20 fucking years. All of our brackets bust. But it doesn't matter because none of us have any clue what we're picking in the first place. And we only invested $10 into it. So it doesn't matter that any of our brackets busted. They're all arbitrary. Nobody's fucking brackets matter except Barack Obama's. I was listening to the NIT semifinals on Tuesday night, and some kid in my car goes, "Is it the Final Four?" And I just want to be like, yeah, for the first time ever, they're playing the Final Four on a random Tuesday night. Final Four has been played on a Saturday night for the past million years, at least. And he would know that if he gave the slightest fuck about college basketball. And it's cool not to give a fuck about college basketball, but then why are you asking me if this is the Final Four? Like, if you got to ask me if that's the Final Four, then you clearly don't give a fuck about the Final Four. This one guy heard sports talk radio and like all the NCAA talk going on. He said to me, "Games have been crazy this year." I was like, "Yeah, crazy games." And I just must have said it with such a condescending tone. He picked up on it. He was like, "Yeah, I guess the games are crazy every year." And I was like, "Yeah, exactly." Like, it just, I just can't take it. But with that said, the games were like a little extra crazy this year. But even if they were just like kind of crazy and not extra crazy, people would still be saying the same shit. They say it every year. And that Virginia Key Hey Clark play was vintage March Madness where he just threw it up. That shit was fucking nuts. I was watching that shit live too. For someone like me who's like tired of making a big deal out of upsets, that ending was one of the craziest ones I've ever seen in my life. There's about like 10 NCAA tournament games which stand out as having like the craziest shit ever happen at the end, and that one is one of them for sure. And multiple people say when as they get out of the car, they just like randomly throw it out there. Hope your team wins. I just want to be like, oh, I'm 37 years old. I don't have a favorite sports team. And like I said, it's clockwork for the cliche March Madness talking points to be repeated multiple times if I have the games on. Is one lady, the way she said it, it was just so fucking annoying. She sounded like I was hanging out with a friend when I was younger, and it was like his grandma was watching the house, and she was like talking to a 7-year-old child. She goes, "So, Kevin, you a big college basketball fan?" I was like, "Yep, love college basketball." It almost got to a point where if I have the games on, I just want to be like, as people get in the car, in case you're wondering, I'm a huge college basketball fan. I don't know who's going to win the championship. I don't have a favorite team. And I saw the crazy upsets. And yes, I know your bracket's busted. I'm not positive, but I think I know what's happening. I think for some reason, some people think it's rude for them to just sit there in silence and not talk to me. I promise you, if I go a day without passengers talking to me, I'm not thinking, geez, passengers were rude today. Nobody asked me if I was busy or what brought me to Austin, Texas. I just think you don't get it if you think the Uber driver's hoping you start a conversation with them. But in terms of being all into like March Madness, no one really cares about the games. People just follow the herd mentality. It's essentially what I do. But I realize it's arbitrary in my life. Other people still go around and make a big deal of it. But even though they're the ones making a big deal of it, it's not like they're watching the games or even giving a fuck about them. Some people just want to talk and are excited to have something to talk about. That's why they sound like children. Like when I was a kid, I was excited to talk about nothing. I was eager to talk about nothing and excited over anything. And that's what they sound like. I don't want to sit around having pointless conversations about the games, but I am locked into them from start to finish every day, whether it's on TV or the radio. But that's just a reflection of my life not being about shit, not because I love college basketball that much. People think being quote unquote into sports is so cool. I think not giving a fuck about sports is cool. And being a big sports fan is like the gayest shit ever. Sometimes during the tournament, I pick up a passenger and it's like two people. They get into the car, like already engulfed into conversation about some random shit. And I'm thinking in my head, they really don't know there's games on right now. These two chicks have no clue there's a big ass college basketball tournament going on right now, let alone able to tell you who the one seeds are. I couldn't imagine living my life like that. I'm envious though. Not giving a fuck about sports is a better way to live life. I talk about being basic. Being into professional sports and having a favorite team is the most basic shit ever. Just the other day during a tournament, but not like related to the tournament, the lady goes to me, "Yeah, I was worried when I moved to Austin I'd be surrounded by Cowboys fans, but it's not too bad." And I just think that statement is like the epitome of being gay as fuck with sports. So I just sat there in silence. And then she was like, "I'm from DC, so I'm a big Redskins fan." And I was like, "Oh, okay. There you go, Redskins. Boo Cowboys." So fucking gay. When people hear me listening to sports talk radio and ask who my favorite team is, when I tell them I don't have a team, it doesn't even make sense to them. They can't fathom how I'm listening to sports talk radio and I don't have a team. If I don't have money on a game, then I couldn't give a fuck who wins any game of sports, no matter who's playing or what the sport is, collegiate or professional. I do understand people rooting for teams like that their child is on, or if there's some type of real connection to it, even if it's just youth sports. Or what Mark Cuban does is awesome, like rooting mad hard for a team that you own. If I owned a team, my life would revolve around that shit. When I was growing up, I was a diehard UNC fan. Now I couldn't give a fuck if the University of North Carolina's men's basketball team loses the rest of their fucking games for eternity. When I was younger, I was worried I'd stop caring about the sports when I became as old and older than the players, and I nailed it. I stopped giving a fuck in almost every way possible, unless I bet, obviously. I no longer give a fuck if some high school kid has great form or jump shot or sees the court really well. And I realize how arbitrary it is in my life if some professional sports organization wins a championship or not. I'm still interested in sports, though. Interested in sports. And I genuinely do enjoy the soap opera that is sports. But I don't give a fuck about the results. Like I said, unless I have money on the game. And if I don't have money on the game, there's nothing that could possibly get me to care who wins, no matter what the sport. I just don't fucking care. And when I tell people like I don't care who wins the game, they're like, "But who are you rooting for?" Like they dig deeper. Like if you had to pick one team, who would you pick? I wouldn't pick either team. I don't fucking care. And I think watching sports is boring as fuck unless you have money on it. It's the most overrated shit ever. Playing sports is cool. Playing sports is fun. Or watching a game that you have real stake in is awesome. But just watching it as a spectator without any real stock invested in it, I think it's just boring as fuck. I do still enjoy the NCAA tournament because the energy and intensity is crazy and the stakes of the game are so high. And playoff games in professional sports are good. But even NCAA games and playoff games, unless I have money on it, I'm not totally locked into every play until it's the end of the game and it's a close score. And here's what's mad funny about the whole bracket buster thing. I totally forgot to check the standings of my March Madness pool because I'm in some other pools that I'm more focused on. But so then I checked that shit right before the Elite Eight games, and I was thinking, I was like, oh shit, I wonder if I have any brackets that stand a chance. And I had one bracket that legit almost had a chance of winning. I was like, oh shit, it looks like this one's like in a decent position. But then I realized like the best I could finish was fourth, and which is whack because only the top three finish in money. And I was 3 points away from being able to win it all. But it was relying on Texas winning the national championship. And then that night they lost. So my bracket busted anyway. But before the Texas game, I was thinking if I had 3 more points and Texas won, I would have been able to win the championship. And all I would have needed to have done was pick UConn winning the Elite Eight game. I had them losing it. But if I had UConn in that, and then if Texas went on to win it, then I would have won my bracket. I would have won the pool. And it would have been a few $1,000. But it doesn't matter because I didn't have UConn in the final four, and then Texas didn't win. But for some reason in that bracket, I had San Diego State in the final four. So if I did had UConn, and if Texas did make it, I would have had three of the final four teams right. And, like, that's another thing that's funny. Like, I said I picked 8 brackets with different winners, so, like, I know I picked the winner no matter who I picked. I didn't even pick the winner because there's 4 teams left, and I didn't have any of them winning any of my brackets. I didn't have San Diego State winning a bracket. I didn't have Florida Atlantic winning a bracket. I didn't have UConn winning a bracket, and I didn't have, Miami winning a bracket. But, yeah, that's the March Madness talk. Got a few minutes left. I had some other stuff. I didn't bring the notes with me, but a few other things I want to talk about from the NCAA tournament. One of them is intentional fouls in basketball. That's the worst rule ever in basketball right now. The fact that when you're up by 3 points, they do it with Hack a Shack also, but when you're up by 3 points with 4 seconds left, you're allowed to foul the team so that the other team can't isn't allowed to take a three-pointer. That shouldn't be allowed. Like, that's bullshit. We allow intentional fouls at the end of the games if a team is down by like 6 or 8 points so that they put the other team on line so that maybe they could come back. Like, it's an unwritten rule in basketball that we all turn a blind eye to allow a team that's down to try to get back into the game. But they're teams do it these days when they're up by 3 points. And I get why they do it. It's a good strategy to do it. They just shouldn't be allowed to do it. If you're up by 3 points with 4 seconds left, you should be allowed to intentionally foul the team that has the ball so that they're not able to shoot a three-pointer. That's an intentional foul. Like announcers are talking about, like it's a good it's a strategy. Should they do it? Should they not do it? They should be fucking allowed to foul, yo. Like it ruins the game. Like you're not you shouldn't when you commit a foul, like when you commit a penalty in basketball, it should punish you. You should be rewarded by it. You should be committing a foul so that the other team can't beat you. Like, it's bullshit in terms of just the gameplay, but it's also bullshit because it ruins entertaining moments. Like, they should change the rule because it's bullshit, but also because it this shit's all about entertainment these days, these sports, and it ruins the entertainment when there's no final shot, when instead it's just fouls and there's just not enough time for the team to come back. Hack a Shack is the same shit. You shouldn't be allowed to foul someone off the ball because they're a shitty free throw shooter if you intentionally foul them. Like, if you want to foul Shaq because he's a bad free throw shooter, it should have to be action going towards the basket. Like, if Shaq's trying to shoot a layup, you should be allowed to foul him hard intentionally, not intentionally, but like intentionally, but not like physically hard. But you should be able to foul him to put him on the line. But you shouldn't be allowed to just grab him away from the play and put him on the line. That should be an intentional foul. It's bullshit that's not. Another bullshit ass thing in basketball is charges. Like, I think about it. I always be thinking about it because it's it's stupid. Charges are corny in basketball. Charges are all about the defender in basketball when they should be about the offender. But I was thinking of this because it happened the other day, and Jim Nance and someone else, maybe it's Reggie Miller, they were trying to talk. They were like, I don't think his feet were set. And like, it shouldn't fucking matter whether his feet are set. A charge in basketball should be more about, is the offensive player out of control? Like, the play that they were talking about, I don't think his feet were set. The offensive player was like totally off balance, was like totally out of control, and he ran over the defender. He charged at him. You know what I mean? Like, it's definition of a charge. But just because the defender's feet is moving, it's a block. Like, that shit's stupid. It should basically be, did the offensive player charge it to him or not? And if you do it like that, then you could, if that was the logic of the rule, if that was the spirit of the rule, then you wouldn't have to call something every time a defender falls over, because that's the stupid shit. What happens is defenders purposely fall down trying to create a charge, but the offensive player didn't really charge into him. He just kind of created an unnatural falling over because it's like he's acting and shit. Like, this one year, a few years ago in the tournament, they were talking about this player in Providence. He was like built like an ox, and he got the offensive player went into him and got called for a charge, and the announcer said something I totally agree with. He was like, that he definitely ran into him, but the way he felt, it was like he got hit in the head by a shovel. Like, he was like, there's no way that like that move actually brought him to the ground like that. And it's just so stupid how charges, like, how it's all about whether the feet are set or not, when it should be, is the offensive player out of control and charging into the defensive player. And if it's like that, then it will be a lot less of defensive players trying to quote unquote take charges. Cause that shit's corny when players are always trying to take charges. Yeah, I guess I could just wrap it up there. But yeah, I still like the NCAA tournament. Like, it just doesn't excite me like it did when I was younger. But I'm so blessed to have the best job ever, the best shitty job ever. Like, I get paid to drive around, listen to NCAA tournament on the radio. It's a beautiful thing. Tomorrow's the Final Four. I'm gonna drive all day listening to the um pregame analysis, and then once the games start, I'm just gonna go home, watch the games, and I'm hit up the road and work a little bit again after the games. Like, it's nuts. I get to work around my own schedule and do whatever the fuck I want. It's a beautiful thing. Best job ever. I can't believe it exists. Stop her. Trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go.